Welcome everyone to What the Force, and welcome to a new episode of Meta Music, where we are covering most recently the music of the Mandalorian. And
Yay.
With me for almost all of these, but definitely today, is Christy Carew.
Hi, MC. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, the door is always open. Literally,
Yay.
If you could escape your country, the door would be open.
Well, I still have citizenship in fair Canada, so
it's true. It's true.
It would just be a matter of packing up the rest of my family and coming back up there. But that I would love to be able to come visit you and see you. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, we'll make it happen. At least 2 years from now that Celebration has been rescheduled.
I know.
It's hard. Yeah.
They made the right move, but it's still, I was really looking forward to seeing you then. And, potentially we hadn't heard back on a panel, but we potentially could have had a panel. So
yeah, which would have
we'll see what
plugged
happens
to Mandalorian and Solo and Rogue One and kind of like the new sounds that we were hearing in Star Wars and what they might do with future scores. Because and this episode in particular is going to kind of talk about that a little bit more, because we were asked, particularly since we're covering the music of the Mandalorian, to talk about the Gallery episode that is now up on Disney Plus. It is episode 7 of the Mandalorian, Making of the Mandalorian Gallery. And it specifically covers the score, which was brilliant of them to spend an entire episode talking about the score, because Christy and I both have been musing about this since we first heard it.
Mm-hmm. Literally that first time.
Yeah, how different it was, how how it felt not like Star Wars, which apparently is what they were going for, which is really amazing, but also still felt like Star Wars. It's just so good. Yeah. And I like how Jon Favreau describes Ludwig Göransson kind of on a different plane of existence.
From the way he looks to the way he dresses to the way his mind works. Yeah.
Yeah. What was before we kind of get into the specifics of that episode and kind of talk through and explain some of the things, I think just in a little bit more detail, talking kind of about what was said. What was your favorite kind of thing that you found out from that episode? Because you knew a little bit of behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I just, in our last episode about Mando, you and I discussed a lot of articles and quotes that were public. Let me find, I have them in my notes here. I think that for me, I hadn't realized quite to the extent that Ludwig is into analog synths. And when he walked over to that massive wall, I've seen a wall that takes it's actually the entire studio. I've seen a composer, a really big, well-known composer, who all 4 walls are covered from floor to ceiling, just with those modules. Mm-hmm. So I know that it's something that a lot of composers are getting into. I guess I just hadn't connected that Ludwig is that much into it, because that was such a massive panel. And I think the way that he described it
reminded me of literally looking at a dashboard for the Millennium Falcon. It felt
exactly.
Yeah, it felt very Star Wars, and I loved his little joke. It wouldn't be Star Wars unless we were using something that looks like a robot out of Star Wars.
I liked that too. That was pretty cool. I also did enjoy that he mentioned that his wife, Serena, was the concert master, and that while they were recording, she was 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
I had heard and about that, but it was really cool that they also added that in, that it was such a family thing for him. Mm-hmm. And they showed him, behind the board at the recording session, and Filoni was saying, you didn't look nervous. You didn't. And there's just this one moment, this one shot of him where he's kind of looking down and up. And I felt like he looked like maybe on the inside he was internally freaking out. You could see a little moment of even if it was just, this is so cool. But yeah, on the outside, totally cool as a cucumber. I've met him in a social setting before, and he was just very cool and collected and calm and nice and just kind of vibing. So it was really cool to see in that context as well, that that's the energy that he brings, even at this massive recording session with the director and the writer and all the producers, and I'm sure tons of bigwigs. Like, I really appreciated that, seeing that as well. Yeah.
It was most appreciative of like where it starts in the episode, where it kind of like, you know, how did he go about it? Because that's something that I particularly enjoy out of getting to speak with Star Wars makers, is the like, how did you come up with this? How did you get to that point where you had this, you know, very inspired Western, you know, and again, Kurosawa, they also brought up, which was
they
really
mentioned
cool.
that again. Yeah.
Western Kurosawa samurai feel to the soundtrack, but like make it Star Wars and make it like modern. Cause this score in particular feels so modern. Like, it feels like a modern any TV show that you might get out there, but yet also feels old. It is just so fascinating to see how his brain works. That's what I appreciated. And he literally like walked us through from the first moments of that gallery episode where he's like, so the first thing I did was I went online and I ordered a whole box of recorders.
Yeah.
And you're going to be very proud of me. I didn't bring it here, but I am actually trying to teach myself the Mandalorian theme on
I do want to hear it
on my recorder. If I ever get good enough, I will like, I can do the woo woo.
Yeah.
I could do that patterning, but it does get quite complicated on a regular recorder, and there's a lot of flats, oddly. So that's why I'm working on it. But
I want to hear that. I love that.
It's not a bass, so it won't have that deep sound. Is just the regular recorder that you kind of hear throughout the main theme. But I love that, like, he's just like, I bought recorders and that I played with organic sounding instruments, and
and then
I have all these synths.
They showed him adding it. They showed him getting that Roland guitar synthesizer out. Then they showed him at the piano, you know, like a beat up old piano in his studio, and then they had him doing all that, and then they cut to it fully fleshed out, and it was just that, to see that contrast was really cool.
And like definitely talking about the different layers. So it was like, you know, he started out kind of with these instruments like the recorder and the drums and the piano and the guitar, and he started out kind of there. It was fascinating. He's like, it's almost like kind of luck in a way. Like that was just so cool. And I had never seen like a wall of synths before. I've seen like little tiny ones, but like I've never seen one like somebody with a collection of them.
Yeah. And the way that it works, where you're plugging these different colored wires into these different like little units, and then you're also twisting the knobs. And sometimes, like, my husband likes to play with synthesizers, and he'll create a sound and say, like, come and listen to this, and I come and listen to it. It's really cool. But he's not at that moment recording it in any way. He's just playing around and experimenting. And I'm like, well, how are you going to get back to that? And he's like, I might not. I might never find it again. And so that kind of, the ephemeral nature of that is really cool in terms of what that lent to his creativity. We'll get into it a little bit more, but I that's a really cool way. Like, his mind is free in a way that is really interesting. And that is really intriguing. His mind is open, and he had to have that openness in order to come up with what he came up with. I think he couldn't have been too rigidly locked into these preconceived notions of what he thought it had to be or sound like. And the trust that they gave him to do that is also really very remarkable and cool.
Yeah, that was really so interesting, that it was like Favreau and like Jon Favreau really thinking like, this can't be John Williams. Like, it can't even be Kevin Kiner, you know? And it can't be, you know, Giacchino. It can't be, you know, although Powell really expanded the repertoire. Like it has to be different. Like when we have talked about this, that it had to sound and fit the medium of TV more than anything had ever had to before.
Yeah.
And it was just really, I just was beyond fascinated that these ideas and this vision had primarily come from Jon Favreau.
Mm-hmm.
Him having such a good sense of film and television that he knew this is the right move to make.
Yeah. And he has a really amazing track history and reputation of how he works with composers. Mm-hmm. He works with John Debney quite a lot on a lot of different films. And he's so great with composers, and he's great with communication. And he seems like he gets it in a way that he's not necessarily coming in and being like, why don't you do a B flat instead? But he's very tied into music as a language, and he knows how to talk to his composers in a really great way.
This is a very quiet episode for Dave Filoni, actually.
Yeah, oddly. He didn't talk that much.
No, he was just there, and he referenced...
He was just smiling and happy and loving it.
Yeah, like he had referenced like how happy, and how important music was to George Lucas, and that was almost like as the keeper of the knowledge of the past. Like that was almost like his role in this. This was more like, hey, how can we make this be something that is just so unique? And I appreciate everything he did. Like I'm so happy. The first one out of the gate, we got Göransson to be like, oh, look at all this Technicolor sand in this sandbox.
Exactly. It's really, really special. And, you wonder, I remember when we were all waiting for it to be announced, everyone had all these ideas, and you just wonder, like, whoever else they might have hired would have created something great, but there's just something cool about the alchemy of how this actually turned out.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't trade it for anything. Like, of course, we have composers we love, and we'd love to hear their take on it, but this is just kind of lightning in a bottle that happened and is really fantastic.
Presumably he's starting to work on season 2, or has already done a lot of the work.
Yeah, I attempted to talk to my friend who is in the world of the Mandalorian story. I wasn't able to connect with him yet, but by our next episode, I hope I can. Because, with social distancing, the way that recording sessions are being done now, they're still happening. They're just having to happen in a much different way with musicians far apart. So whatever process they are in post, they could technically get the score done. It just has to happen in a much different way. It's not going to be, those people we saw in this episode in that room together. It's going to be, okay, here's the brass over here in the corner, and they're all separated. And then here's woodwinds way across the room, and they're all separated, and then trying to tie that together. So yeah,
larger studio space, maybe.
Yeah. And maybe just like a lot more time. Normally it's done in such a, pretty wham, bam, bam series of days where everything needs to happen. But yeah, I've been watching some of my colleagues who have continued to have big scoring sessions through this now that it can be opened up a little bit. I don't know what's going to happen now because California has gone a little, things went not great here in the past week or so, but we'll see.
I love what we're getting from him. So let's get into the gallery episode. I like how it's broken out, and they actually got into a little bit of moments of different pieces to talk about. And we actually got, pulls from different parts of the score itself, which was really cool.
It was cool to demonstrate it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And then one of the things that you highlight in our notes here is that he made those 5 songs kind of to demo, and they were filming it. It looked like they were filming Bryce Dallas Howard's episode. So
because she was there,
chapter 4, Sanctuary, and like he holds up the phone and like plays it for the documentary camera and everything like that, and it's like, oh, okay, he really did have it, because it sounded exactly like what we get. But what we got was so much better because it was like produced with the studio. And
the reason why it blew me away was because I know for me, when I'm about to play my director, the first thing that I've done, I like to like come in, sit down in this studio on the comfortable couch. Here's something to drink. Here's my big speakers. You can really hear the bass and really have it hit you. Like when you're presenting for the first time, I'm always like a little bit nervous. And so I want to make it this like big thing and hear it on the best speakers possible. He's just so confident in what he did and just so excited and ready to go, and just like, I'm just going to bring it on a phone and just play it off my little phone speaker right there for you guys on set. There's noise, there's stuff happening, and the way that they heard it and the way that Favreau just looked and said, you hear that? That's it. That's it. Like that moment was just so cool that, you know, he had taken the time to do those 5-minute songs and just go ahead and bring it in right away and play it on the phone right there on set. I put in my notes, what a gangster, because I just love the confidence of that.
Yeah, I loved it too. I loved how it also felt like it was already like coming together. Like it was instantaneous and everybody kind of knew, like by just hearing it, they're like, yes, this is it. Yes.
Yeah. And that's one of my favorite feelings. Like I do love when the entire score is done and they've heard everything and they've loved it. And like, let's move on to the next step. But there is something really special about the first time they hear it. And in 2018, when I was at the lab, when I played what I wrote for the director I was paired with, he had never heard anyone put music to any of his work before.
Oh, wow.
This was his first experience hearing somebody specially compose something for his work. And he fully burst into tears because he was just so emotionally overwhelmed with that, and because he liked what I wrote. But that's one of the best feelings, is when you've just started to put your ideas together for it and come up with this cohesive thing, and then you play it and they really like it and they really vibe with it. That's a fantastic feeling because it skyrockets you on into the whole rest of the score. So
exactly. I liked as well how he had started coming up with the idea of it. And it's exactly how other people talk throughout the gallery. It's like this man on this solo journey, and it's very much from his perspective. Like he's talking about the hero's journey because he had been reading the scripts and coming up with these ideas and then working with the instruments to get almost like creative feedback. I felt like that was like just a very interesting iterative process.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll ever be able to ask him if the main theme is the hero's journey, as you and I have theorized. And as I believe we demonstrated quite well in the last episode.
It was pretty good.
I long to ask him that someday.
It's so fascinating because we came up with that episode, and then Ty and I had done the Power of Myth and Symbolism episode all about how much there is, you know, the Joseph Campbellian hero's journey within the Mandalorian, and then literally like they're talking about it throughout this whole gallery.
You guys are like, yeah.
And we're like, well, so we said it first. I know you guys did it purposefully, but I'm very proud that we got it right.
It's awesome. So great.
So what do you think about his process as somebody who, you know, has to kind of do it your own way?
Yeah, I really loved his process. Like I really, I'm also interested to know, I remember you and I talked about this last time, that he sought out John Williams's earlier work. And obviously he knew
Earthquake.
Star Wars scores really well. And he listened to scores from the Westerns and the samurai movies and stuff. But I'm also interested to know if the filmmakers at any point sent him things, like if they specifically said, listen to this score from this, because quite often what happens with the films I work on is that there is a temp score in there, and there's varying degrees of temp love where they want to stick close to it, or they want you to throw it wide open. So I feel like the process tends to be different on projects where the director is very open and free and wants you to try things, or when they're tied already in their mind to a type of orchestration or instrumentation that they want. So I'm kind of
we had the Marconi stuff, right? And Morricone.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure there's some little influences that we hear on it that we're like, he probably, that was part of this, the overall mix of things he was listening to. But I do feel like all of that was probably more just for a feeling and a vibe, and that him coming up with the recorders and him coming up with the combinations that he did was really just from him having the open mind, and how he said he went into the woods. I don't know which woods he went into, but he describes himself as having gone into the woods for a month and then sitting in his studio by himself. I think that the combinations that came to him were definitely from his process of emptying his mind, freeing it, and getting very organic in that way, and then coming up with that 3-part combination. The fact that there were the organic instruments, there was the synth, and then there was also the orchestra, and how he was going to conceive of that and put that together.
I agree with you. I actually think that John and Dave maybe didn't even know really what they wanted, because
I think that's much more likely than them being like, here's a bunch of references.
Yeah, because they knew they didn't want John Williams, which is like such a it's like a no, not John Williams, please. No, but like, truthfully, they knew they needed to step away from the old legacy of what Star Wars has been to try and forge a new path. And this is very much in alignment. Like if you think from a very mission statement perspective, like, hey, what are we trying to achieve, or what are our goals with this show? Stuff that Ty and I have talked about this whole time, in that this is a Trojan horse show to get us into this new era of Star Wars storytelling in a visual medium, and to really kind of change the direction a lot. And like, the amount of Mandalorian stuff coming out now is mind-blowing. We're getting like 6 books. We're getting like a new unique novel, like not even covering, like not a novelization or anything, just a unique novel. We're getting an art of first season book. We're getting children's stories. We're getting like all sorts of different materials, plus all of the merchandising. Like they're pushing hard into this new story because they know it's incredibly successful, and also people are very, very interested in it. But it also has that staying power. Like we're not getting anything post sequel trilogy at all from
I know.
But no, I just find that very interesting. I honestly think that they're like trying to like book close the saga and be like, okay, what is the new, and how can we get there in theme and in the technology, like in every aspect, and in the score, and in how we do it, why we do it, when speaking with Phil Showstack, he mentioned that, I think it was after the episode, because I don't think this was on the record, but after the episode, he said it is the most in-house project that he has ever seen.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah. Like we're
like
talking
the most
about
inclusive, like just within Lucasfilm and within their storytellers.
Like think about it. It's like Jon Favreau and Göransson, or like, it's like everybody else is like, they're using their own people. Like ILM is all the technology people, and they've got the studio space, like the soundstage space with the cool Unreal Engine backdrops and stuff like that. Like that's fascinating to me,
for what it harbinges for the future, for what it tells us about,
because it's
what
building
the bridge this is creating.
And it's building all of the internal mechanisms and working pieces that allows it to function. And we know that when things are under Lucasfilm direct supervision, they're less likely to leak, etc. So yeah, I'm excited.
Me too. I liked when Favreau said that they felt that Ludwig was the right person to do this, to be entrusted with what we just discussed, taking it into this new era, because they could tell that he wasn't scared by the challenge, and that allowed him to view it as fun. and take the pressure off. And I thought there was such an interesting echo for what John Powell has always said, that he did feel nervous about it, about solo, until John Williams told him, just have fun.
Yeah.
Just stop.
It's Star Wars. Just have fun.
Take it off your shoulders. Just have fun. And that was when Powell felt, oh, okay, I will. And he tapped into all of this incredible stuff that he did. So there, I think he used the words that it was like a kindergarten playground style of creativity for him.
I do have one critique. As much as like the amazing creation, Ludwig was the right choice. Like we can all say that, right? My one critique of the storytellers and what they have done is we literally see what can be perceived as an old boys club conversation happening live in the gallery episode, where they didn't even consider women or a diverse composer.
It's hard to know like what's going on behind the scenes with who they do choose to demo for, not for this specifically.
Well, yeah, but we only saw this example, and it was like, oh, I had worked with, on The Lion King.
On The Lion King, and they worked together on, he produced Childish Gambino's album. Yeah. Like that was a tie between them. Like for me in general, based on my knowledge from some of my colleagues, like it's at women getting into the room and demoing is happening like a lot more. And demoing for not just like, oh, let's ask only women to demo for Wonder Woman, or let's it's not just being pigeonholed in that way. More and more women are getting in the table and demoing, and it's never going to be a blind process because the relationships are so key. They did have that connection between having worked with Donald and having that be what was tying them together, and Black Panther and all that stuff. I understand.
It looked a little... Yeah. Like, to be critical, it didn't look like it was something that they had an open mind about. And
and you're right. It could be. I think
like they were definitely the reverse of that with the directors, etc. And I would hope that they would be attempting to challenge their preconceived notions of who can work with who for future projects.
I think they are too, because there were a bunch of, on Disney Plus, there's a bunch of animated shorts you can go check out. I can't remember the names of them right now, but I have several of my female colleagues who composed the music for those animated shorts. And that was like, I believe, and that was a conscious decision from Disney and Pixar and their animation to open those conversations up and to open the demos up and get all this amazing music from these incredibly diverse composers and hire from there. From the seat I sit in, I see it getting better. It's happening a little slower than we might expect, but I do see it getting better. And I do see more and more of my friends and colleagues who are women getting bigger and bigger opportunities. The key will be when a woman is in the seat for Star Wars, and when that happens, wherever medium it comes in. They have said before that, they wanted to hire a female director for a big saga Star Wars film, or whatever the next iteration of that is going to look like. They obviously did a great job on The Mandalorian. So I feel like those conversations are now in the forefront so much that it's probably going to be the next thing. And there's also, I know you and I have talked about this before, that just the layers and the chains of how things have to go up all the way to the top, and the people ultimately making the decisions. Like now it's starting to be less of like, okay, well, we have to go this way because so much is on the line. I think they're now starting to understand that. What was that article I read where Kathleen Kennedy said that they wanted to hire a female director, but they were waiting for somebody to be ready, or somebody to be at a certain point. And everyone was like, well, what about all these other guys, Gareth and Colin and these guys who hadn't done all experience. Of that much before you went ahead. So it's not that this is just something that happens in Star Wars. Like it's pretty prevalent in Hollywood, but I do feel like you can kind of see it. Like the Academy just invited 819 new members, and so many are women. So many are like these incredibly diverse artists and storytellers. There's conscious
one of my
efforts.
favorite K-drama actors is in there.
Yes. And the composer for Parasite.
Yeah. So it's just, oh man, there's just, I do think Ludwig was the right choice for this, score. It just, my hackles are up a little bit to do with how selection processes happen, primarily because it's still an old boys club from a fandom perspective, and that leaks into what people think Star Wars should be. And so
I agree.
I challenge, because it's not the director necessarily too. Sometimes it's the producer. And I challenge producers out there to really think hard about, and if it has to be an optics thing, it's an optics thing. Get more women to demo. Just do it. Just be like, I want all the women to demo.
Yep.
Shove a boy in there just as a surprise, but geez. You know what I'm saying?
Agree.
Like,
I agree.
Just, and speaking with Nolan, from an orchestration perspective, it is a very small community. And so to not even trip over a woman composer is kind of awkward.
And I did mean to tell you that one of the interviews I did, I think it was for the 365 Days of Star Wars Women, she was kind of like, I think you really are the first woman that I've talked about music to with Star Wars. And can you look up and see if there has been a woman who did Star Wars music? And I looked and I looked and I looked and I didn't find anything, but she actually did. Yeah. She found a woman who did a TV thing back in the day. And I need to go look up what her name was and everything. But, there's amazing who've written some of the music that is in Star Wars land or the future land at Disneyland, and there's different rides and attractions and stuff. That definitely is there, but we have yet to see the major video game title, the major feature film, the animated series, all of those things. And to me, that's really exciting that those are still to come and that we're still to hear that. And even with directing, that we're still to see those visions and, a writer-director Ryan style and, all of that type of stuff. I feel like I personally believe that is in the works and it is coming, and they do have a
Leslie Headley. I'm sorry to put so much pressure on you, but
sorry, Leslie.
Russian Doll was amazing, and so Star Wars. So you're my hope's lie in you, Leslie. You're my only hope. No. I'm really excited about a lot of the Star Wars stories that are upcoming.
Yep. I agree with you. I see what you're saying. I completely.
It's just more of an optics thing that it made it feel like, oh, you know who I gotta go to? This white dude. and sure, yes, he is brilliant and he exists on another plane of existence than us and slightly godlike powers with with what he produces, and that he's got such an amazing repertoire, but it sucks that, we don't hear, that, we chose a woman.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think that you and I have plans for another series that we're going to do where we are going to talk about women composers.
Yeah. Yeah. With my burgeoning baby other YouTube channel where I want to talk about it's like everything but Star Wars. I should have called it probably.
We're going to talk about it all. We're going to introduce your audience to a lot of really amazing voices. And I feel like
so excited.
Think about The Witcher, right? And think about how huge The Witcher was. Female composer, Sonia Belousova. She has a partner, Gianni Ostelli, I think is how you say his name. They are a composing team, but she is a brilliant pianist. That's how she started. She's one of the best pianists I've ever heard in my life. And she's very well known for her arrangements of Star Wars music and playing them on the piano and just beating this piano to shreds because she plays so hard and so well. And now, their soundtrack for The Witcher just went multi-platinum, was at the top of the charts. It was some of the most well-known music of the past couple years. I could see her doing a Star Wars. There's so many women who are now have kind of bubbled up to the top of everybody's minds and consciousness now. And I could easily see that lightning hitting. And, you know, we don't think we've quite been in that position before. So,
no, absolutely.
But, you know, first we had Pinar Toprak breakthrough with Captain Marvel and starting to see the ripple effect everywhere. So
totally. And the Captain Marvel score was beautiful.
Really, really nice. She's an incredible writer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there was this moment.
Side tangent.
No, it's okay. And it's just a critique of how it looked. And I don't think that they even saw that that's how it looked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But to me, that's how it looked, because I look at these things. I really like, just to switch gears and talk about his amazing work, because it does deserve this whole episode talking about this gallery episode. But sorry about that tangent.
No, I love it.
Important.
I love it. I'm very passionate about it. Clearly,
yes,
I have a stake in this.
You're like, please hire Christy. You know, the part where they're talking about the prisoner episode. And he's like going into the synths a little bit more in detail. I love this because he was talking about building like the sound landscape and like
the soundscape.
Soundscape, and like how he played to try to produce just all of these unique sounds. And that episode itself is like very psychological.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of with the horror aspects of it that are being brought in, like the Mandalorian as monster, the aspects of betrayal, the thriller aspects, the, you know, the
noirish,
yeah, like all of the different aspects, and to hear how he talked about the, I don't know, creating almost like the mood with the synth, it was really, really fascinating.
I thought that was too. And that's kind of where he mentioned that those soundscapes often can't be created again, but they would lead him to another idea. Mm-hmm. He'd hear something, and maybe that wasn't quite what he was going to use for that, but something about it would tickle a part of his brain, and he'd switch into this and bring this in. Again, people who I know who compose with these quite a lot call them happy accidents, where you create something that it's not quite what you're going to use in that scene, but it leads you down the path to the next thing. And I did think that it was cool throughout the entire score, where when you're in a more organic world, the music felt more organic. When you were in a more techie ship space setting, there were more synths and crunchiness. There's obviously exceptions, because when he's fighting I can't remember the name of the rhinoceros looking thing, the mudhorn. When he's fighting the mudhorn, you know, there's crazy distorted synths just like battering you during that part. It's one of my favorite
like the
parts.
Crunching sound.
But I liked the way that each locale and each emotional world of the episode, like it's actually, you and I said this last time, it's actually very layered the more you look at it, how he is contrasting these different feels on so many different levels simultaneously.
This all goes back to him having just such a good understanding of the story and the emotions that he wanted to make sure to evoke, I think.
Yep.
And, you know, again, those conversations with John and Dave, I don't get the impression that he worked too closely with the individual episode directors. It definitely felt like it was an overall vision from, like, you know, John and Dave working together with him.
It did feel that way. It would have been, I guess it would have been cool for their roundtable if perhaps he could have had a Deborah or a Bryce talking about their individual episode and kind of relating in that way. That could have been cool to see. But also they wanted to just maybe have it be more concise with the three of them. Yeah. Because there was so much to get into.
Yeah. And to like, especially lay the groundwork on, you know, what is the difference between this and, you know, a full movie score, or, you know, Rebels or Clone Wars. Like, how is this different, and why is it important that we're doing it this way? And they definitely got that across, which was...
They did. They, you know, saying that the third factor being the orchestra was always intended to honor John Williams and the history of Star Wars. And then he said, you know, music has always been the lightning rod of Star Wars. No matter what your opinion is, no matter if you're a prequel stan or you're an original trilogy stan or a sequel trilogy.
What you like about it, what you don't like about
doesn't matter.
it. Yeah.
It's everyone agrees own the music. And the words they used were iconic and perfect. Yeah. So it was so important to them that they didn't just want to repeat things as a shortcut to get through to the audience, to connect them to this new story.
God, that makes me so happy.
That
it makes me
right
so
there,
happy. Yeah.
It's like that ethos right there is like, we're fine. We're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Everything going forward, we're going to be fine because they got that.
And it makes me so happy to hear that they're not attached to there's a almost recontextualization of the same themes. Like when you use the Force theme and it's out of context, it recontextualizes it a little bit. Just think about how originally it was supposed to be Ben Kenobi's theme, and instead it got cut in with a, music / edit, while they were in the editing room into the binary sunsets theme. Right. So when Luke was looking at the binary sunset, and suddenly that turned into sort of not just Ben Kenobi, but more about this Force and destiny type theme. And then it was used in that way going forward until we got to The Rise of Skywalker, where it's kind of used all over the place in very odd ways.
As we discussed.
As we have discussed on a previous episode. But it's important to me that although we had moments of homage in Solo, especially, like we had the Imperial theme and the
little Death Star motif.
Yeah, the Death Star motif.
Asteroid field a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, little touches of these things that it actually was unique and completely different from an experience perspective. And they weren't afraid to actually be like, nope, we're not going to use these themes except for the little tiny moments that are actually just in the layers, like we've talked about with Yoda's theme being used and the Force theme, of course, being used.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. So I think that's a smarter way to go, is like almost subconsciously, you don't even realize that it's there unless you have that ear for it.
Yeah, which you do.
Apparently I do, because I said, is this Yoda's theme in here after I listened to the episode? And you're like, holy heck, it is. Yep. And I'm like, oh,
the cool harmonic. It's cool that you, it's like more of a harmonic thing than anything melodic. And you picked up on that because your ears have become quite attuned, I think.
I agree. I could never actually do any of this, except I am attempting to learn the Mando theme on the recorder.
Love it.
Again.
I did also think it was so interesting that Filoni described it as both a benefit and an impediment, that people put such grandiose importance on Star Wars and all of this, with that he said, it should be fun. It's directed at kids. It's mainly directed at kids. So
They've
obviously
been saying that a lot recently.
They have been, right? and like the benefit is clearly because people love it so much, and because it's a part of the mega fans
collective
DNA.
It's the collective
and the
subconscious, like everybody knows what the Imperial March is.
Yeah. But then the impediment is that he says, when you're cherishing something too much, you're holding it too tightly. And all that whole little segment, I was just like, wow, like it applies to so much that is happening right now as we're leaving one era behind and moving into the new one. It applies to the music. It applies to the whole way that they're approaching the storytelling. And it just felt really good for them to say it. It felt really good for these two people who are basically part of the stewards of where we're going next.
Yeah. I do want to do a quick shout out to the Sky Talkers. They did an episode probably about a month ago by this point, as this episode's coming out, on nostalgia. And
such a great one.
It was really, really good. And they brought up some just amazing points. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, I think it's just very valuable to listen to, because a lot of what we're talking about, which is like moving into this new era, and like, what is Star Wars if you can't use any of the shorthand?
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
'Cause that's what it is, right? Using the themes is like emotional shorthand and
emotional
maybe not
musical shorthand.
Yeah, and maybe not the best approach. It makes sense when you have Luke Skywalker back on screen or you have Leia back on screen, but for this show, it's a completely different story. It's a completely different, direction, and it might overlap certain things. And if some of the rumors are true about Ahsoka and maybe, Rex or Boba Fett or, Mon Mothma coming back, like I think we might get some hints at some themes in a Ludwig kind of way, but I don't maybe he'll work with Kainai and be like, hey, what did you use for Ahsoka? What can I use? What can I pull in here? Can I make it a more womanly adult version of what you used?
Could it be on guitar? Could it be on synth? Could it be something vocal?
I mean, she's very forcey, so it might be more orchestra. It's interesting, and the Force theme seems to follow her quite heavily, so we might actually get a full play of that. That's a lot of speculation. Sorry, guys, but I do think that if we are getting, as speculated, these characters coming in, these particular actors coming in that play these particular roles,
and even Katie Sackhoff, Bo-Katan.
Will we get musical ties from Clone Wars?
Yep.
And Rebels.
It's pretty exciting, but it's also tying back to what we just talked about. Is the fun part will be to see how they do, if they do that, how they do it, and how he incorporates it to everything else, and what kind of tapestry could he create, bringing in allusions to those themes.
And I'm not afraid of that. I think that makes sense if the character shows up for story reasons, right? Yep. I think that's a genuine story need to pull in that storytelling element as is using visual cues that this is the same person, using vocal, using Katie Sackhoff again coming on to the show and playing the same character. That's just another part of the storytelling. Remember, everything in Star Wars is story, right? So costumes, props, creatures, set, everything is story. So it is just another tool would be to pull in the music of those characters.
Yep. And I think that he's somebody with the creativity that he has and with the fresh way of looking at it. He'll be able to do it in a really cool way.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You do have this highlighted line, and I'm not sure if you said it was the echo. He didn't want to echo to the audience. And I think that really, it's not about repetition, although repetition is important in Star Wars from a rhyming perspective to remind us of things and to feel similar. It's not a repeat, right? Yep. That's really, really important.
That's a really good distinction to draw. So, and I even think that in Solo, they accomplished it. They accomplished not repeating, even with the motifs that they had, even the fact that it was this very lush orchestral score, the use of the Bulgarian singers, the use of the incredible styles of orchestration that are unique to Powell. They pulled it off as well, but they couldn't do even close to that with this, because that Solo is still in continuation with the saga films. It's still mainly a character that is associated with our whole full Skywalker saga, and they really had to break with it for this, so that the orchestra is a part of it, but it is really third. It is really broken into thirds and having it been woven together in a really precise way, instead of having that be the main focus, because they couldn't, even though Solo accomplished it without just relying on nostalgia and pulling on your heartstrings of these themes. It brought in these incredible new themes that did that for you. They couldn't even skirt close to that for this.
No. And I'm proud of them.
Me too. Yeah, and I really liked seeing, I think that Ludwig's actually younger than me. I think he's a little bit younger, but for our generation of composers who are in their 30s and in their 40s, that this is what made the hugest impact on us was John Williams, was Star Wars, was what made us want to be composers. And the way that they talked about generationally, how for kids, by the time I let my boy watch The Mandalorian, like this might be his Star Wars. This might be his thing that propels him into the world. And the music that he will forever associate with it could be Ludwig's music. Like the continuation of that, and how each wave, like the Sky Talkers, love the prequels and are known for being like that. That was their thing that brought them in. Like that music is ingrained in them. And like for you and I, it's the original trilogy and listening to it on vinyl and having that be wrapped up. And I love this idea of how generational it is and how this baton is just kind of being passed. And
every time I sit down to watch a gallery episode, my son sits down with me.
I love it. Yeah, that's like something it's going to be imprinted on him as what.
Well, and Baby Yoda, like this show was literally, I don't know how they did it, but like they literally made the show for my son because of, Baby Yoda, the child, the asset, just that whole concept of being a dad. And like my husband, Kyle, is just such a good dad with my kids that like, that's his ideal in his head. Like he wants to be like dad and he wants to be a dad. And so like now he has this, like we just got the child's doll and he's like, the little girl I used to play with, she had baby dolls. This is a man baby doll. And I'm like,
I love that.
Yes.
I saw that there and it was so funny.
Yes, it is. It literally coos and cries and like.
Yeah, mine has that one, the smaller one that when you push it, it's like,
it's like, and it like does the squeaky noise at one point. And then he's got his little like bone broth cup and his little frog.
Yeah.
Like it has the accessories. It makes the noise. The only thing it doesn't do is, the baby that poops and pees and stuff.
It's perfect size to fit in like a doll stroller. It sits in a doll high chair.
Yeah.
Yep.
It does all the things. I talked to him about getting a little baby Bjorn type thing for baby Yoda. And he was like all in it. He like the baby has joined his like stuffy set. And I'm very happy about that because like that makes him happy, and makes him care about the baby. And like, another toy, etc. But it makes it's valuing like love, care, compassion, nurturing, fathering, like, and what more can we want to teach to our young boys?
Yep. I agree.
Oh, wow. And like what I wanted to say was like that's how formative this show has become for my son, in that like I'll sit down and watch a gallery episode and he's transfixed. He loves everything that has to do with this show. We'll turn on the music. He's listening to it. He knows this so well now that I was expecting the saga, like the sequel trilogy, to be his Star Wars, because we kind of watched it as, he was growing up, or but no, this is his Star Wars, and I'm really happy.
For him,
yeah, this is the thing, and it makes me just over the moon that he's got
so
something
special.
Cool.
And I think that like when Ludwig was saying that, you could see the joy on his face. You could see how happy he was to be a part of that and to be giving that gift to this whole new generation of kids. So I really enjoyed that.
I also liked how they made a big deal of saying that this is the first like television like enterprise that they're going into to the orchestra, like to really say like this is just part of it, but this is an important first thing that we're doing with you. So thank you for all your work on this.
And they all looked thrilled too.
Yeah. And his wife, I think you said her name was Serena?
Serena, yeah.
Yeah. Looked like a sweet pregnant lady.
just rocking it on the violin and leading that orchestra. Like, yeah, there were quite a few players, quite a few familiar faces in there that played on the sequel trilogy. And probably not prequel trilogy, but sequel trilogy for sure. And have worked on tons of J-Dubs' scores over the years. And to see their faces and how excited they were and how much fun they were having, that was cool too.
It's a rockin' score. Like, we're so lucky that this is the first one out of the gate.
Yep.
All right, Christy, do you have any other final thoughts on the gallery episode? I know we didn't listen to any clips this go around, but we'll save them all up for our next episode. But we wanted to make sure that we talked about this, especially since there was so much behind the scenes information.
Yeah, I think next time that we talk about this, we covered like mostly the first half of this season last time. So we're going to get into the second half. And in the meantime, I'll try to get as much information as I can about what is happening with season 2 and the score and what's going on. And I really can't wait to see what happens next and where he takes us next.
I'm so happy it's coming out in October. I actually still think we're going to get a trailer drop at the end of August, no matter what.
That would be so great.
Even though we didn't get the, we're not getting Celebration this year, which
we would have for sure gotten it there. Yeah,
we would have gotten it there, and then it would have been released publicly at the same time. I think that the plan will still be to drop it around that time period. And they've just announced so much Mandalorian material, so I definitely think
it makes sense, to tie it in with that.
Yeah, and then that's like a month and a bit out from when we're getting it, because we're getting it sometime in October. They haven't specified the date yet, but I think, soon we will have more Star Wars to talk about, and that's always better than less Star Wars.
Yes, because, living through the time when there was a lot less.
Way less.
That's why I tell the youngins that you were so living lucky. In a smorgasbord. You were at the buffet of content. Talk to me when I was 13 and just had tattered novels and VHS tapes, and that was it.
Just watched the VHS tapes and fan content ruled, right? Because there was literally nothing else other than, novels and comic books and stuff like that. Yeah.
And now all my arcane knowledge of those is worthless because they're not.
It's not worthless.
You're right. It's not worthless. I can still win trivia contests, and it all informs, the way I look at the entire.
And, they're pulling back the selective things, right?
That's true.
The concepts that work, right?
There's plenty of those.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Christy, thank you again. Where can people find you if they're looking for you online?
On Twitter, Christy_Carew, and Instagram, Christy Carew Music. And then on my blog, I actually have been working on some Tross related meta.
Oh,
which I haven't done any yet, but I actually did. I started really going down a path thinking about Anthem of Evil, and
it's so good.
The comments that you and Felicia and Frank had in our discussion. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to start there, and I'm going to write a meta about that piece, even the concert arrangement, and not even necessarily how it's used in the film. So that's where I'm starting. So on my blog, Enjoy All Need Nothing on Tumblr, that's my next project. So
awesome. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is the What the Force theme, orchestral music by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We would like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force. Brad, Cheryl Bell, Melody, Night Huntress in Wild Space, Susan, Felicia, How Rude, Anna Perez, Macau Mum, Neil, and James. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other podcast apps. It helps others find the show. You can connect with us on Twitter at What the Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, or our website, whattheforce.ca, or on our new Discord. The links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.